hidden in the shadows, authorities have buried chilling accounts of real werewolf encounters.
What you just heard are not sound effects from a film. They are not the products of an overactive imagination. They are echoes from incidents recorded within the NightHowl files, events that blur the line between predator and prey, legend and evidence. Tonight, we unseal a sequence of files concerning the Lycanthropic Gene. These 6 accounts span continents and centuries, from forgotten villages buried in the deep woods to the fringes of our modern cities, places unaware of the shapes that move just beyond the streetlights. Each file represents a collision between the human world and a primal force that has walked beside us since the first moon rose. The authorities you are meant to trust have systematically redacted, buried, or ridiculed these testimonies. They label them as mass hysteria, bear attacks, or the ravings of madmen. We at the NightHowl Archives know better. We collect the pieces they leave behind. We listen to the stories the wind carries, and we preserve the truth. Before we begin, subscribe to the NightHowl files and activate notifications. What we reveal here is not fiction, it is testimony. And you won't want to miss what's uncovered next. Our first file does not come from some remote wilderness, but from the heart of industrial Europe. A place where the old forests were cut down to fuel the engines of man, and the deep, ancient things were thought to be left behind. They were wrong. Case file NHF 118. The iron-scented reign of Hafenbach. Location: Hafenbach, a logging town in the Black Forest, Germany. Date: October 17th to 23rd, 1987. Primary witness: Klaus Richter, a foreman for the local timber mill. Hafenbach was a town of calloused hands and simple rhythms, defined by the sound of saws and the scent of fresh-cut spruce. Klaus Richter was a man of this world, pragmatic, strong, and dismissive of the old tales his grandmother told of the wolfsman in the woods. The autumn of '87 was unseasonably cold, the rain constant, a chilling drizzle that turned the forest paths to mud. On the morning of October 18th, Klaus's logging team failed to report in from Sector 7. When he drove out to investigate, he found their heavy machinery idle and silent. No signs of a struggle, save for one thing. The driver's side door of the Leadfeller buncher was torn from its hinges. Not broken, not cut. The metal was gouged, as if by 5 immense blades, and the steering wheel was bent into a perfect U-shape. The rain had not washed away the overwhelming coppery smell of blood, yet there was none to be found. The only physical trace was a single wolf-like paw print pressed deep into the mud. It was nearly 18 inches across. That night the sounds began. Not the usual rustle of deer or foxes, but a low, rhythmic huffing outside Klaus's home at the forest's edge. His dogs, 2 formidable Rottweilers, whimpered and hid beneath the kitchen table, their tails tucked tight. The following evening, through his rain-streaked window, Klaus saw a shape moving between the pines. It was too large for a man, too upright for a bear. It moved with a fluid, powerful gait, and for a moment, the ambient light from the town caught a pair of eyes that shone with a sickly, phosphorescent yellow. The local police wrote it off as a prank, a bear, anything but what Klaus knew in his bones it was. The rational world was crumbling. On the 3rd night, it came for him. The power to his house cut. The huffing was at his door. Klaus, armed with a hunting rifle, watched the solid oak door splinter inward. The thing that filled the doorway was a monument of wet fur and corded muscle. It stood on two legs, its head brushing the top of the frame, a long muzzle pulled back from teeth like shards of ivory. Its eyes held not the mindless fury of an animal, but a cold, ancient intelligence. It sniffed the air, and a low growl rumbled from its chest, a sound that felt like it vibrated in Klaus's very bones. Took a single step inside, then paused, its gaze locking with his. It did not attack. It simply turned and melted back into the storm-racked forest, leaving Klaus paralyzed in the dark, the scent of wet wolf and cold iron filling his lungs. Klaus Richter sold his property and left Hafenbach within the week. The official report cited a psychotic episode brought on by work-related stress. The damaged machinery was quietly scrapped. To this day, the town speaks of Klaus in hushed, pitying tones. But the older residents, those who remember the older ways, lock their doors a little earlier when the autumn rains begin. The file has been marked, contained, observation ongoing. We believe the Hafenbach entity was not hunting for food. It was delivering a message, a territorial warning, ignored for too long by the encroaching loggers. The logging in Sector 7 never resumed. The forest has since reclaimed it. We monitor the area, for the thing that walked like a man and smelled of iron is still there, a silent guardian of the deep, dark wood. But the deep woods of Europe are not the only refuge for such primeval power. Our next file takes us across the Atlantic to a landscape of water and stone, where an entire community learned that some legends are born from a very real and very contagious bloodline. Case File NHF 155. The Wailing Echoes of Lac de la Bête. Location: Sainte-Serine, a remote fishing village on the shores of Lac de la Bête, Quebec, Canada. Date: a series of incidents spanning the winter of 1951. Primary source: the collective testimony of Father Mathieu Lacroix, as recovered from his personal diary. Sainte-Serine was a place frozen in time, a cluster of wooden houses clinging to the shore of a vast, unforgiving lake. The winters were long, and the nights were longer, the silence broken only by the cracking of lake ice. The people of Sainte-Serine were insular, bound by blood and a quiet, pervasive superstition. They spoke of the loup-garou not as a myth, but as a curse that could pass through families. It began with the Thibault family. Old man Thibault, a recluse who lived on the northern shore, was found dead on the ice just after the new moon in January. The official cause, relayed by the lone constable, was exposure. But the details in Father Lacroix's diary tell a different story. The body was rearranged, parts were missing, and the snow around him was not stained with red, but was instead a chaotic mess of prints. Large, deep, wolf-like tracks that, bizarrely, led to the body, but none leading away. It was as if the creature had descended from the sky. In late February, the youngest Thibault son, Jean, a boy of 17, confessed to Father Lacroix in a state of hysterical terror. He claimed that on the nights of the full moon, a fever would rack his body, and his bones would feel like they were breaking. He spoke of a compulsion to run, to hunt, to feed. He showed the priest his hands. His fingernails were ragged and bloody, and dark, Coarse hair was growing thickly on his knuckles and the backs of his hands. Hair that had not been there a week prior. That night, under the glaring light of the full moon, Jean Thibault vanished from his locked bedroom. His window was shattered outward. A search party found Jean 3 days later, deep in the woods. He was alive, but catatonic, curled naked in a den of leaves and dirt. His body covered in shallow, self-inflicted scratches. He never spoke again. He was transferred to a sanitarium in Montreal, and the incident was buried. The Thibault name was never spoken in Sainte-Serine again. The wailing on the lake, however, did not cease. It simply grew more distant, more mournful. The file has been marked, the Thibault bloodline extinct. We believe the curse in Sainte-Serine was a dormant lycanthropic gene, triggered by an unknown stressor. Jean Thibault was the last carrier. His fate illustrates a tragic, often overlooked aspect of the condition. Not all who carry the curse embrace the beast. Some are broken by it. Our agents periodically check the sanitarium. Jean Thibault, now an old man, still whimpers in his sleep when the moon is full. The deep woods and frozen lakes are the ancient sanctuaries of the beast. But the hunger of the wolf is not bound by geography. It can flourish in the most unexpected of soils, even those poisoned by the ambitions of man. Our next file comes from a place where science and savagery collided under a desert moon. Case file NHF 209. The Howlers of the Trinity Fallout. Location: a classified research outpost 35 miles from the Trinity test site, New Mexico, USA. Date: intermittent incidents from July to December 1945. Primary source: recovered personal log of Dr. Alistair Finch. Project: Long Shadow. In the aftermath of the first atomic detonation, the world was focused on the political shockwaves. But for a small, specialized team of biologists and radiologists, the concern was the environmental aftermath. Their covert outpost was established to study the effects of extreme radiation on the local fauna. Dr. Finch's early logs are clinical, detached. He notes the expected mutations: gigantism in scorpions, strange albino coyotes. But his tone shifts by late August. On the night of August 12th, the perimeter security, a series of tripwires connected to flare guns, was triggered. The guards reported seeing a pack of large, mangy-looking coyotes moving at an impossible speed, their silhouettes distorted in the flare light. They were gone before any shots could be fired. The next morning, Finch led a team to investigate the tracks. They were canine, but the stride length was double that of any known desert predator. More disturbing was the radiation signature. The Geiger counters clicked frantically, registering levels that should have been lethal to any living creature. One of the junior researchers vomited upon finding a patch of coarse, gray fur snagged on a cactus spine. It was warm to the touch. The encounters became a monthly terror, synchronized with the lunar cycle. The creatures never breached the compound, but their presence was a constant psychological siege. Dr. Finch's log entries become increasingly frayed. He writes of hearing low, chattering growls that seemed to carry on the wind, a sound that was wrong, intelligent, and mocking. The desert nights, once silent, were now filled with the sounds of something large moving through the brush, circling the chain-link fences. The local jackrabbit and rodent population vanished entirely. The smell was the worst, Finch wrote. Not the scent of an animal, but of ozone, burnt hair, and something sweetly putrid. The full confrontation occurred on the night of December 10th. A communications blackout stranded the outpost. The generators failed. In the profound darkness, the creatures came. They did not howl. They vocalized. A series of clicks, growls, and modulated tones that sounded like a twisted parody of human speech. Using night vision scopes, the guards saw them. There were 3. They stood on their hind legs, their forms emaciated and twisted, with elongated spines and jaws that seemed to unhinge. Their eyes glowed with a faint, sickly green light, the same hue as the radium dials on the scientists' watches. They simply stood at the perimeter, watching the darkened windows, as if studying the terrified humans inside. After an hour, they dropped to all fours and loped off into the desert, leaving only silence and the smell of radiation sickness behind. Project Long Shadow was terminated 2 weeks later. All personnel were subjected to intense debriefing and sworn to secrecy under the Official Secrets Act. The official story was a containment breach of radioactive materials. Dr. Finch's log was supposed to be destroyed. He spent the rest of his life in a private psychiatric facility, diagnosed with radiation-induced psychosis. He would often whisper to his nurses about the shining dogs and the children of the atom. The file has been marked, contained, environmentally limited. We believe the Trinity test did not create these entities, but rather awakened and mutated a latent, ancient strain of lycanthrope native to the American Southwest. The radiation became a part of their biology, a source of power and corruption. The area remains a designated no-go zone for reasons the public does not understand. Our long-range sensors continue to detect anomalous radiation spikes and those distinctive, chattering vocalizations during every full moon. The Howlers are still out there, forever changed by the dawn of the atomic age. Yet, the curse is not always born of radiation or ancient bloodlines. Sometimes, it is a passenger carried across continents, its hunger stowed away in the belly of modern machinery. Our next file proves that no matter how fast man travels, the beast can always keep pace. Case File NHF 267. The Midnight Express to Yekaterinburg. Location: the Trans-Siberian Railway between Krasnoyarsk and Yekaterinburg, Russia. Date: February 3rd, 1978. Primary witness: conductress Anya Petrova, a 20-year veteran of the Soviet railways. The train was the lifeblood of the Siberian winter, a steel serpent cutting through an endless expanse of white. For Anya Petrova, the route was a familiar monotony of clicking rails and sleeping passengers. The carriage was warm, filled with the smell of black tea, damp wool, and coal smoke. The passengers on this run were a typical mix: soldiers, bureaucrats, and a few civilians, all bundled against the cold. One passenger, however, stood out. A man, tall and broad, boarding at a remote, unscheduled stop. He gave his name as Boris Dragunov. He spoke to no one, and his papers, while impeccable, felt new. The first incident was small. A communal samovar in the next carriage was found smashed, its metal pot shredded as if by a wild animal. The strong, Sweet smell of kvass and iron filled the corridor. Anya assumed it was a drunk passenger. Then, a few hours later, a woman reported her small dog missing. A search found the pet's collar, but no body. The clasp had been snapped, not unbuckled. It was then that Anya noticed the state of compartment 7, where Dragunov was sequestered. The heavy door was locked, but from the gap beneath it, she saw a pile of what looked like shredded, raw meat, and the air carried the thick, musky scent of a zoo enclosure. As night fell, the atmosphere in the carriage grew heavy with unease. Passengers reported hearing a low, rhythmic scratching from compartment 7, like a dog trying to dig its way out. The temperature in the corridor outside his door dropped significantly, their breath pluming in the air. Anya, making her rounds with a feeling of dread, saw that the polished brass handle of Dragunov's door was bent, warped as if by immense, repeated pressure. The train's own dogs, used for security, cowered and whined in their kennel car, refusing to come out. The rational explanations were exhausted. All that remained was the locked door and the primal fear coiling in their guts. Just outside of Yekaterinburg, the train jolted violently, triggering an emergency brake. The lights flickered and died. In the sudden, absolute darkness, a roar erupted from compartment 7. A sound of rending metal and splintering wood, followed by a bestial scream that shook the windows. For a single, terrifying second, the emergency lights flashed on. Anya Petrova, frozen in the corridor, saw it. The door to compartment 7 was gone. Inside, the walls and ceiling were gouged with deep furrows. And standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the snow-filled night, was a hulking, bipedal shape of matted black fur. Its muzzle lifted as it sniffed the frozen air. Then, with a speed that defied its size, it leaped through the shattered window and vanished into the blizzard. The official report cited a structural failure and a hysterical reaction among passengers due to a bare sighting. Compartment 7 was quietly removed and scrapped. The KGB confiscated all passenger manifests and Anya's official statement. She was forced into early retirement. Boris Dragunov was never seen again. No body was ever found in the snow. The file has been marked entity at large, presumed migratory. We believe Dragunov was a Volkodav, a specific breed of Russian shapeshifter known for their immense size and control over their transformations. He was not hunting on the train. He was containing the beast within, using the steel carriage as a cage until the stress of the journey and the sudden stop broke his control. His destination and his purpose remain unknown. He is a ghost, a wolf that rides the rails, and his name is now one we watch for in all transit reports across the Northern Hemisphere. The wilderness and the open road are one thing, but the most terrifying encounters are those that occur when the walls of civilization become a cage, and the hunter is already inside. Our next file comes from a place where concrete and steel could not keep the old world out. Case file NHF 301. The things in the London Underground. Location: the disclosed Bethnal Green Bunker, a sealed deep-level shelter from World War II, repurposed and forgotten beneath the London Underground network. Date: a series of disappearances from 1999 to 2003, culminating in the Blackwood incident on November 5, 2003. Primary source: The recovered duty log of security officer Gavin Blackwood. The bunker, as it was known to the few maintenance workers who knew of its existence, was a time capsule of the Blitz spirit, now layered with decades of dust and silence. Gavin Blackwood's job was a form of punishment. 8-hour shifts monitoring rusting machinery and the sounds of rats in the walls. His logs begin with mundane boredom. Then, the entries change. The first anomaly was the smell. Blackwood noted a thick, wet dog stench that would manifest in the Eastern Tunnel T7, a branch sealed since the 1950s. It would come and go with no discernible pattern. Then the sounds began. Not rats, but something larger. A heavy, dragging gait. A low, guttural panting that echoed down the ventilation shafts. Maintenance crews sent to investigate T7 reported tools gone missing. And one man claimed to have seen a pile of bones, old and clean, stacked neatly in a service alcove. He was reassigned for drunkenness. Blackwood's logs become a chronicle of mounting dread. He writes of the security cameras in the T7 sector suffering from persistent, localized static, during which thermal sensors would spike. He started finding footprints in the dust, part human, part canine, with long, cruel claws. They would appear overnight outside the reinforced door to his control room. The air in the bunker grew colder, the silence heavier, pregnant with a sense of being watched. The rational explanation, homeless squatters, feral dogs, collapsed under the weight of the evidence. This was something that belonged in the tunnels, something that had been there long before the bunker was ever built. On November 5th, the motion alarms in T7 blared. Blackwood, against protocol, armed himself with a heavy steel pipe and went to investigate. His final log entry, captured by his body-worn microphone, tells the story. The sound of his ragged breathing, the creak of the old door to T7 being forced open, the overpowering stench of a predator's den. Then, a voice, rasping, ancient, and layered with a bestial growl. "You are in our larder." This was followed by a chorus of snarls, not from one throat, but from many, closing in from the darkness. The transmission ends with a scream, the sound of tearing metal, and then a profound and lasting silence. Gavin Blackwood was listed as missing, presumed the victim of a collapse in an unauthorized area. The bunker was permanently sealed by order of the Transport Authority. The official record states it was due to structural instability. Our agents, using non-invasive sonic imaging, have since detected movement behind the sealed bulkheads. Scratches are found on the inside of the door every morning. They are not trying to get out. They are marking the days. The file has been marked, contained, habitat secured. We believe the entities in the deep-level shelter are not lycanthropes in the traditional sense. They are something older, a subterranean offshoot that has evolved to live in the perpetual night beneath the city. They are the true rulers of the London underscape. We do not know how many there are. We only know that the door must never, ever be opened. The things in the dark have claimed their territory, and they are hungry. Yet, for all the horror, there are files that defy our easy classifications. Cases where the line between monster and man is not merely blurred, but erased entirely. Our final entry is not a story of a sighting, but of a confession, a testament to the curse from the mouth of the cursed. Case file NHF 400. The Confession of the Moonshadow Man. Location: an undisclosed safe house in the Pacific Northwest, USA. Date: ongoing since 2019. Primary source: direct audio testimony of the individual known only as Subject M. We at the archives do not only hunt and observe. Sometimes we offer sanctuary. Subject M sought us out. He is a man in his late 40s, with the weary eyes of someone who has lived 100 lives. He is articulate, intelligent, and utterly broken. He has not transformed in 5 years. He claims he has found a way to suppress it. We are recording his testimony, for it provides a glimpse into the lycanthrope's mind that few have ever captured and lived to tell. His story does not begin with a bite. It begins with his family history, a lineage he was unaware of until his 35th birthday. He describes a calling he felt to the remote woods where his grandfather had lived. Compulsion. On the night of the full moon, alone in a cabin, the change took him. It was not a violent rupture, but a surrender. He describes the feeling of his senses expanding, the world becoming a symphony of scent and sound. And then the hunger awoke. His testimony is a harrowing journey through a dual existence. By day, a man, living a life of quiet routine, filled with the gnawing guilt of what he is. By night, a prisoner in his own home, fighting the urge to answer the call of the moon. He describes the pre-transformation state not as pain, but as an unbearable itching in the marrow, a restlessness that feels like your skin is trying to crawl away from your bones. He speaks of the beast's mind as a separate consciousness, ancient, territorial, and single-minded. It does not hate humanity. It simply sees them as prey, as things. The most chilling part of his confession is not a description of a kill, but of a moment of clarity. He recounts one hunt, chasing a deer through the woods. In that moment of pure predatory instinct, he felt a sense of peace, of purpose, so profound it was euphoric. It was the most alive he had ever felt. And the horror came the next morning, remembering that feeling, the visceral joy of the hunt, while looking at his human hands. The monster was not an invader. It was a part of him he had learned to love, and that was the true damnation. Subject M remains in our custody. He is our most valuable resource and our greatest tragedy. He spends his days transcribing his experiences, mapping the territories of other, less restrained entities he once ran with. He is a ghost of a man, haunted by the beast he carries within. A beast he has not freed in years, but one he confesses he still misses, like a lost limb. The file is marked, "Eyes Only the Archivist." Subject M's testimony has reshaped our understanding of the lycanthropic condition. It is not a disease to be cured, nor a demon to be exorcised. It is a state of being, a second soul sharing one body. His account serves as the final, sobering lesson of this compilation. The most terrifying monsters are not the ones that stalk us in the night, but the ones we discover, silent and waiting, in the dark corners of our own blood. These 6 files from our archives, from the iron-scented forests of Hafenbach to the weeping shores of Lac de la Bête, from the atomic-blasted deserts to the rattling Trans-Siberian, from the deep dark beneath London to the quiet, tortured confession in a safe house. They all confirm a singular, terrifying truth. Humanity is not alone at the top of the food chain. We share this world with forces that are older than our cities, stronger than our steel, and as relentless as the turning of the moon. The authorities tried to erase them. They were labeled as bears, as madmen, as radiation sickness, as structural failure. But the evidence remains. The claw marks on the door, the distorted footprint in the mud, the chattering howl in the desert night, the locked compartment torn apart from the inside, the scratches on the sealed bulkhead, the haunted look in a man's eyes as he describes the joy of the hunt. Werewolves, lycanthropes, therianthropes. The names we give them are less important than the lesson they carry. The night is not empty. It is governed by rules older than any kingdom, and those who break them seldom live to tell the tale. The moon never shines on innocence. It reveals what we are and what we have always been, both the hunter and the prey. The NightHowl Archives exist to preserve these forbidden histories, to bear witness, and we are always listening. If you have encountered something you cannot explain, a sound in the woods that was not an animal, a figure that moved with an unnatural gait, a family story that hints at a hidden bloodline, submit your account in the comments below. The Order reviews all testimonies. Some are chosen for investigation. Your story could become the next file in our vault. Subscribe to the NightHowl Files. Turn on notifications. The shadows are deepening, and the next transmission could contain a name you recognize. A town you've driven through. A story you thought was only a legend. Keep your lanterns close. The shadows move quickly, and the next name in these archives could be yours. This has been a declassified transmission from the NightHowl Files. Until the next moon rises, stay awake, stay wary, and never walk alone.